Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, looks like we have 3 and 3. And again, if you're asked a question, please respond. Otherwise, it will be only questions or comments from any of the members. So at this point, I would like to open it up to any questions or comments from any of the members. Okay, who was up first? So I believe Senator Hall was up first. We'll go ahead and go with Senator Hall.
So in my district in Los Angeles, about 95, 96% of the folks in my district support vaccination, have been vaccinated, if you will. So I'm just trying to figure out if it means that 99% of the folks in my district are wrong about this. Because if that's the case, then I'd rather be wrong with the 99% of the folks in my district who actually support it. And here's the challenge that I have. If, in fact, there are folks in my district understanding the importance of this, supporting this, and there's a small population of folks in the district perhaps cannot use the vaccination or be vaccinated, if you will. And then there's a certain portion of folks in another area who say, we don't believe in this. And that small portion in my district who cannot be, because of an illness or what have you, are exposed to folks who have not been vaccinated. What type of harm would that place my constituents in? An opponent.
Is that a question or a comment?
It's a comment. It's a question, rather. Yes. The doctor, please.
You want somebody for the bill?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if I understand 100%.
So if someone is in my district and they're sick, they have some type of condition where they cannot be autoimmune disease of some sort, and they're exposed to someone who perhaps is ill, who choose not to be, vaccinated, if you will, would that person put in harm's way? Would that person put my constituent in harm's way?
Yeah, so if you have a constituent in your district who is immune compromised or from whatever other reason they can't get vaccinated, then if they're exposed to infectious disease through another unvaccinated person who's unvaccinated by choice, that puts that person at risk. And it's hard to quantify the risk because for every different infectious diseases are more or less contagious, and then the vaccines are more or less protective. So measles is a good example because it's one of the most highly contagious diseases.
So that is also true for others then, right? So that is also true for others, right?
Right. It's also true for other vaccine-preventable diseases such as mumps or pertussis.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe Senator Monning had a question and or comment, then Senator Woke.
Yeah, I'll start with a question. And again, I want to thank the chair and the staff for coordination. I do want to thank all of those who have come to testify today. Clearly, there's a common motivation, which is concern for our children. That's what brings everyone here today, and I respect that. Let me start with a question. Maybe through the author, Dr. Pan, but maybe also for the doctor, and it picks up on what Senator Hall asked. Several of the people who testified in opposition said they were opposed because they have an autoimmune disease or disorder. Would your bill would the medical exception allow somebody with an autoimmune disease not require vaccination?
Yes, actually, existing law, which we do not touch.
Shh, please, no comment at this point.
So actually, existing law for the medical exemption allows a licensed physician in the state of California to exempt the child with a medical exemption for vaccination. And so if the licensed physician believes that that child is at risk for injury from the vaccine, they can simply give a medical exemption. There is actually, in many ways, the law has no restrictions on a licensed physician in being able to do that.
Thank you. And then maybe for the pediatric physician from UC Davis, kind of the same question. In your practice, Could you profile a situation where a child who presented, what type of child would be a candidate for medical exemption from vaccination?
Thank you. Yeah, so let me give an example from a child that I would see. So, for example, a child with maybe lupus. And to control lupus, sometimes one needs to use high-dose steroids for immune suppression because it's an autoimmune disease, so you want to calm down the immune system. In that case, they'd be more susceptible to infectious diseases, but you may not want to give them even a weakened form of the virus that's in the vaccine. So, for example, you specifically wouldn't want to give them MMR vaccine because it is a live virus that might multiply more than you would want it to. And that specific patient, you would certainly exempt from that vaccine.
Thank you. And in your practice, does that describe real situations where you have supported or recommended an exemption from vaccination?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I think I do have some other comments, but I think maybe I'll defer till after there's other questions, and then when we wrap up, I might have an opportunity.
By all means.
Thank you.
I believe Senator Woke, comment, questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't have comments. I'm ready to move. I mean, I don't have questions. I'm ready to move to a motion when we're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Senator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, a comment. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I did sit through the entire public comment period, and there were certainly some difficult points made during that and some difficult times during the process. And I just wanted to first commend the extraordinary professionalism displayed by my colleague from Sacramento during that process. I'm not sure that I could have done quite as extraordinary a job as he did during the public comment. Now my question, I believe in vaccinations and in appropriate cases requiring them, but I have some concerns, and I apologize for missing part of the process. I had to chair another committee at the very beginning of this hearing, but it's my understanding that in addition to the measles issue, which we have been concerned about here in the United States, that this bill mandates that a series of other vaccinations be administered, about 9 others. And so my question is, why are we mandating the other 9? And I guess I don't care who responds. Dr. Pan?
Certainly. These are all vaccinations for diseases that can certainly put children at risk. So, for example, polio is a required vaccination. Hopefully we don't want polio to come back. We also recommend require DPT, which is pertussis, tetanus, and diphtheria. And while some people have pointed out that tetanus itself is not a contagious disease, it is combined with pertussis, whooping cough, and diphtheria. And most people have never seen diphtheria here in this country, but actually, for example, in Russia, when they actually had a tremendous drop in vaccination rates during the chaos after the fall of the Soviet Union, there actually was diphtheria that re-emerged in Russia. So hopefully we will never see diphtheria come back to the United States. It's known as the silent killer, but that's another disease we require. Hepatitis B, one thing I would make note is that hepatitis B is a disease that's actually the main cause of liver cancer. While some people would say that why should my child doesn't have sex, doesn't do IV drugs, why would I want to immunize? Actually, there are children who catch hepatitis B perhaps through through some sort of contact or something during childhood. We do know that cases of children pick up hepatitis B when they're young, and that's why the recommendation is to immunize them as children, because immunizations don't work after you catch the disease. You have to do it before you catch the disease. But every one of these immunizations, and that is one that I think we can talk about that actually causes harm, and that the benefits of vaccination certainly far outweigh having the disease continue. The other thing I want to point out is that while it is true that in current state law, and we didn't change that part of the law, that the Department of Public Health can make decisions about adding vaccines to the to the legally required schedule. So this is not actually has not happened in the state of California except through the legislature, and for actually I think for a very long time, decades. So in many cases, we're actually not even requiring that children get vaccinated with every single recommended vaccine when they enter school, just a subset of them in terms of what's in the law. So the law is very clearly stated which particular vaccines are required.
But for some time, this list has been, I call it sort of an opt-out situation with the personal belief exception. Mm-hmm. You can opt out of getting one or more of the vaccines on the list. So aside from measles, which has been of some interest in the media and otherwise, was there some triggering event that causes us to now think about mandating as opposed to allowing an opt-out for Hep B, for tetanus, for polio, which has been an issue off and on for years? I'm just curious, is this just a convenient time for us to revisit it and require all the vaccines?
So unfortunately, what we've seen so far, as I said in my opening testimony, is that we've seen both pertussis and measles come back. Measles is the most contagious, so it's surprising that it's the first one of the first ones to come back. Pertussis, partially because the vaccine does tend to wane in immunity quicker. You don't get lifetime immunity with pertussis, so it tends to be in the population. In order to protect infants who are the ones most at risk, we need to get everyone in the population. So those two studies have been done, recent studies have been done showing that the outbreaks that happened here in California in 2010, in fact, we passed a law here in California because of that pertussis outbreak to mandate pertussis vaccination when you enter into 7th grade or at 12 years of age, because we had 10 children die and over 9,000 people get infected, and you had hundreds of hospitalizations from that pertussis outbreak. So pertussis clearly triggered legislative action. Measles, of course, we have the Disneyland outbreak, but don't forget that in the year before, in 2013, before the Disneyland outbreak, we had a record 644 cases of measles in the country. So it's not just Disneyland. It's also, we're seeing this growing outbreaks, and this is what we don't want to see happen. Certainly, I hope we never see polio or diphtheria return. That would be, but we're already seeing, basically, canary in the coal mine is already showing that we have a problem right now. Both the Disneyland outbreak and the pertussis outbreak that happened in 2010, and actually last year, 2014, there was another resurgence of pertussis as well.
Is there a reason then that we're not just simply focusing on measles and pertussis as a basis for the mandate and allowing the opt-out for the other vaccinations?
Well, I think that I think the issue is that, well, we could certainly just focus on those two vaccines. The problem is that if we do we wait for the other ones to return in order to now make a decision, right? And so there's a reason we've decided to require those particular vaccinations. Every one of those vaccinations has been discussed and debated by the legislature and has been recommended for school entry. And that's why they're on that list.
So now, with respect to the provision that allows the Department of Public Health, if that's the department's name, to add vaccines to what will now be a mandated list as opposed to a list of vaccines from which people could opt out, is there a reason why we are allowing that to continue to remain in the statute? Because frankly, if I'm being asked to mandate that people get a vaccine, I'm somewhat reluctant to turn over to a California departmental agency the opportunity to add mandated vaccines to a list without at least coming to talk to me or whoever's on this committee about the rationale for it, the risk associated with it, the reason for the mandate, and all of the other issues that we can think about sitting here.
Well, I think certainly that could be something we can take a look at, because as I said, it has never been done by the department without legislative action in the past. Now, if we want to sort of solidify that in statute, obviously this is not the immediate time to do it, but I'd love to have a conversation with you about that, whether if that's something that would make this issue, make this bill more workable for you. We can certainly have that conversation as well.
And one thing I'm not certain, one issue I'm not certain about, I just want to ask, because I'm sure you all are, is does the Department of Public Health today not have the authority to step in appropriate cases if we have communities where the immunization rate is extraordinarily low, to step in and require vaccinations at public high school districts?
There's only been, so first of all, they don't have the authority to go in advance. They can, when an outbreak occurs, they can force people to be quarantined, they can force people to leave the school. There's only been one situation in the United States where they've actually forced vaccination. That was actually during an outbreak in Philadelphia, where there were over 900 people who got measles, and actually 9 children died. It's not a step that we want to take. As I said earlier, this bill is not about mandatory vaccination. We don't want to get to the place where we're going to be mandatorily vaccinating children against their parents' will. This is about ensuring that we keep our vaccination rates high, that we're protecting our public spaces, particularly our schools. The reason California and every other state in the country passed vaccination requirements was to protect the public and to protect children at school. And that's really what we're trying to restore. Because the personal belief exemption has basically, the use of that has increased to the point where we no longer have that protection. That's what we've seen with the pertussis outbreak. That's what we've seen with the measles outbreak. We need to restore that balance so that people, we've had witnesses here who talked about how they are afraid of now bringing their infant into public places to pick up their older sibling in school or go to other public places because now measles is around. They're seeing notices when they go to Trader Joe's, or they get a notice that Bart, there was a person with exposure, or if you go to a restaurant, suddenly you get a notice from the Department of Public Health, oh, you might have been exposed, you or your infant might be exposed to measles. Or actually pertussis. In fact, actually, I was going to bring up later, this is a notice that was sent out today by the Sacramento City Unified School District notifying parents of a school that their child might have been exposed to whooping cough. It's happening now.
Well, thank you for your responses. And
No, please, no public sergeants.
thank you for your responses, Dr. Pan, and for your professionalism during this process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I believe Senator Mitchell, I saw her, she wants a comment or question.
I have a question of the opposition at the table. A number.
Excuse me. Ma'am, this is not the place to do this. Excuse me, move her from the building, please. Ma'am, this is not the place to do this. Ma'am, this is not the place to do this. Please exit the room. Please exit the room, ma'am. Ma'am.
Discredits the whole crowd.
Before I ask my question, I have to say that while I agree with my colleagues who acknowledge civic engagement and people's willingness to come and participate in this discussion, I have to say that as chair of the Budget Subcommittee on Health and Human Services, I would hope that as we discuss other critical issues that have budget impact, that impact families and their children in California, that people would be equally as focused and concerned on the broad array of issues that we have the jurisdiction to make decisions on that impact all children and their families. Furthermore, I have to say, as an elected member of the state Senate who represents just under 1 million people, I resent the nature of the calls that have come into my office that have posed personal threats to my person. We can all engage civically, civilly. I do that every day when I took an oath to be a member of the state Senate. So the kinds of calls I've gotten, not one of which was from a member of the communities I represent, I deeply resent. And let me say that I have the capacity as a member of the state Senate to look broadly, take in all critical information, and make an unbiased, emotion-free decision on what I think is best for the just under 1 million people who elect me every 4 years. With that, let me ask the opposition. A number of the members of the public who testify, who brought up their children and talked about that they, or children or grandchildren, talked about that their children were either damaged or sensitive to vaccines. Show me in the bill, I certainly hope you have a copy, the language that would prevent those families or their doctors from them being vaccinated if a medical professional deemed them vulnerable. Could you show me the language in the bill that doesn't protect a parent or a child from being vaccinated? I'll give you my copy of the bill if you don't have one. They could show me the language in the bill. One of the members of the opposition.
Take your time. They can come back.
We've been here a while. Take your time and look at it.
I mean, a number of people have asserted. So the danger, I feel, as a policymaker, is when assertions are made in public comment that aren't fact-based. That's irresponsible. So please show me the language in the bill that would prevent those parents from protecting their children who a medical professional says are vulnerable and should not be vaccinated. I will wait. You can go on to other members, sir, Mr. Chair, if you'd like. I'll wait for the answer.
We
Thank
will
you.
let the opposition, if they have a response, if you don't have a response, just say, we have no response at this time. We will move on. I think Senator Wynn, I believe, question, comment?
Oh, I have a question.
Sure.
Sure.
Senator, I know that you have a section here to be amended.
Yes.
On Section C. Would that address the homeschooling problem?
Yes, I just want to be sure we're clear that I am taking the committee amendments, so I just want to make that very clear, and that would clarify the issue that if you homeschool your child, you would not have to have the required vaccinations.
Well, let's clarify. These are authors' amendments?
Sorry.
Wait, these are not committee
I'm
amendments.
sorry, authors' amendments.
Sorry, Mr. Yes, sorry,
Yes.
Chair.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because, I mean, that was a very critical component that was very important to me, to making sure that those parents who choose to homeschool their children has a choice.
And I agree with you because, again, this is not a mandatory vaccination bill. This is about protecting the public, and we do want to be sure there are options for parents to be able to educate their children if they choose not to vaccinate.
Then my next question is, in the current proposal, is there any protection for religious reasons?
So in the current proposal, basically, if you don't have a medical exemption, then you would have to homeschool your child. There's no other exemption. We've eliminated the personal belief exemption. There's no religious exemption currently in the state statute.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I would also point out that there's been no religious organization that has formally expressed that they had objection to vaccination in relation to this bill, and it's communicated to our office.
I believe Senator Manning wanted to readdress or question or make comment.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So I keying off a question, I would just add that part of the public health strategy with vaccination, the public health protection is based on a high percentage of the population being vaccinated. So when people opt out and you drop below a certain level of vaccination, it's my understanding you create a greater susceptibility, not just to the unvaccinated, but even people who have been vaccinated who may have a weak resistance even after that vaccination. So designing policy or legislation that was only reactive once there's evidence of an outbreak, you're defeating the public health objective. So that's why, informed by the CDC, by academies, by pediatric academies, the list of vaccinations that is recommended and would be evidence of which would be required under this bill, it's based on achieving the broadest public health protection possible. According to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, the chance of a serious allergic reaction due to DTaP, MMR, or varicella vaccines is less than 4 in 1 million doses. But one child will die out of every 10 who gets tetanus. Of 1,000 without measles vaccine, 1 will die. And in 100,000 of older children who contract chickenpox, 1 will die. So if you look at statistics and you're making a decision for the benefit of public health, you choose between 4 in a million with an adverse reaction versus fatalities among those who remain unvaccinated. That said, the concerns of the majority of those here today, who are guided first and foremost by concern for the health of their children and their families. They are driven by what they think is best for their children. But where we have a balance here with this bill that is a tough one for us is, on the one hand, many people voiced their strong belief that they have a right to make the decision for their child. If it were just a decision about their child, I think you would find no quarrel with having a right to make that decision. My concern and my trouble with that opposition is that you're making a choice not just for your child, not just for your family, but a choice that potentially affects another person's child. A decision that potentially can set in motion the mother who we heard from today, whose child contracted measles on a trip to Disneyland. And so when our vaccination rates go down, we create greater susceptibility, not just to those that haven't been vaccinated, but to even those who have been vaccinated or who can't be vaccinated because they suffer from an autoimmune disease. So this puts in conflict a personal decision affecting your family or your personal belief and what we're elected to do, which is to protect the public health and safety of the people of the state of California. And it's for that reason that I'll be supporting this bill today. And that does not denigrate the concern voiced by families, but to make sure you understand, as Senator Mitchell pointed out, make sure, just as you've sought to research what's best for your child from the point of view of vaccinations or vitamin supplements or whatever the preferred protections are for your child, make sure you know what this bill says, because this bill still protects those of you who share a concern that your child may have an autoimmune deficiency or some other susceptibility where you will be eligible for that child to exercise the right under that exemption. I know this bill has a way to go. I know that the chair will be voicing his views, and I'm curious to hear those as well. But I just want to thank those who have engaged today in a respectful and informed and principled discourse. And I am working very hard not to let those who have also, I think, crossed the line of civility with my office and today in the hearing room, that I do not attribute that to all the others who were here in a respectful manner. And with that, I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.